invite Professor Ian Pacey to begin the case of the opposition.
Thank you. To avoid confusion, I'd like to begin by mentioning some educational practices I strongly support. Do I think it's worthwhile to study culture and thought from all parts of the world? Yes, absolutely. I also believe we should study multiple histories and their interactions, and concepts such as capital as a global phenomenon. The effects of colonialism upon all such phenomena are obviously important, though their existence, nature, and extent needs to be investigated anew for each specific case. Colonialism has been a global phenomenon for many centuries, and there's no less reason to study the impact of the Umayyad, Ottoman, Mughal or Qing empires, or for earlier times those of the Aztecs, Incas or Ghanaians, than those of Britain, France, the Netherlands, Spain and Portugal, especially with respect to contemporary concentrations of power, territory and culture. But what has brought about the alleged need to decolonise the curriculum, and what would it mean to do so? Standard definitions of colonise refer to one group taking over control of another land, people, or sometimes culture. In the case of the curriculum in Western countries, and I want to focus my discussion on these, especially on higher education, in disputed territories within nation-states, such as Catalonia, the Basque Country and Northern Ireland, some there might claim their education system has been colonised by dominant groups. But otherwise, in Western nations, state education is ultimately democratically accountable to the people as a whole. So what it means for such a curricula to be colonised is far from clear. Perhaps it could refer to characterisations established during colonial eras of non-Western peoples and regions. From a realist perspective, this is a legitimate objection, and warrants the injection of alternative data and perspectives as well. Or it could mean teaching the findings of the luminous amounts of scholarship on the history of colonialism. That's certainly something I would support for scholarship that's nuanced, rigorous and evidence-based. But I do not believe that the movement to decolonise the curriculum... Yes?
So, to be clear, you are in favour of the policies of decolonising curriculum, you just don't like calling it decolonizing curriculum.
I wouldn't call what I'm in favour of, I wouldn't call that at all. I'll come back to that. I don't believe the movement, as Lisa presented by many of its advocates, is really about such things. One of the most prominent books on the subject, Decolonising the University, edited by a team headed by sociologist Guminda K. Pambra, the sheer negativity of contributors towards ideas of objective knowledge, liberalism, enlightenment, or even civilised exchange is startling and alarming. It's difficult to know what would remain in education if all of these were jettisoned. But in chapters in the same book by geographer Angela Last and educationalist Carol Azuma Dennis, the real Leninist agenda becomes clear. How to shamelessly exploit universities and their internationalisation strategies which, quote, can operate to the benefit of decolonial activists when they, quote, hit an obstacle in their immediate environment. And then more widely use the institutions to create an education, quote, that makes use of the language, time and authorial voice provided by the university to accomplish its purposes. This supplanting of education by activism is a flagrant abuse of the power and responsibility invested in academic staff, who should be able to listen to and engage with students of all. Now, I'm not giving away again, all opinions. Classical decolonial theories, such as those of Franz Fanon or Annibal Pisano, claim coloniality frames all aspects of knowledge and existence, but apply this crudely to a supposedly homogeneous West. In many institution statements on decolonisation, one encounters correspondingly crude views of the West versus the rest, as if the West were the only part of the world to engage in colonial conquest, and all regions therein had done so consistently throughout their history, whereas the rest is no less homogenised. This view is so simplistic as to be risible. For example, moving to my own field, a large part of the standard classical musical repertoire from the 18th and early 19th centuries comes from German or Italian lands. Neither region, nor many of its citizens, had any sizable part in extra-European colonialism prior to this time. Certainly not in the eras of Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Schumann, Rossini, or for most of the life of Verdi, who lived in areas then under Austrian control. Yet it's common to simply label all of these as colonial music, rendering the term quite meaningless. It appears that anyone who can be classified as white is thus rendered colonial.
On.
Okay, very quickly.
Simple question, yes or no. Do you think Rhodes ought to have fallen?
What Rhodes ought to have fallen? That's not relevant here. Now, this is really about racial binaries rather than colonialism. then its protagonist should have the honesty to say that. Then the associated stereotypes of supposed Western reason against supposed non-Western irrationality, knowledge and theory against intuition and fact and so on, will be clearer for all to see, and for that matter their own colonial provenance. In another article, Rowena Arshad says that existing understandings of the world, quote, have been grounded in cultural worldviews that have either ignored or been antagonistic to knowledge systems that sit outside those that colonise us. This erases many Western thinkers who have engaged with thought, culture or social organisation from Asia, Africa and Latin America. And nowhere is this worse than in rhetoric about decolonising science and maths. The mathematician John Armstrong has noted how many papers on this cite key decolonial thinkers to claim that rationality, abstraction, progress and more are exclusive to the West. Kisano speaks of the European paradigm of rational knowledge and serve as strategies for domination. And this again ignores the huge contributions to the mathematical discipline from figures from India, Egypt, Korea, Belize, the Mayan people of Central America and beyond. Alan Sokal has noted how some decolonial thought made into official policy in New Zealand serves to relativise scientific truth out of existence. And Russian-American chemist Anna Krylov has linked attempts in the Soviet Union to purify science of Western influences with recent attempts to decolonise science. An example she gives is the removal at Sheffield University of Isaac Newton or Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz from an engineering curriculum because they could be considered as benefiting from colonial era activity. Whether they did or not tells us nothing about the scientific value of their work, which is what matters. But much decolonisation sacrifices science, scholarship and truth to ideology, no, as much as did the Soviets. Should Korean academics reject all Japanese scholarship? Or those in countries from Iran to Indonesia decolonise themselves of all Arab achievements, not least in mathematics? There's no point in enforcing curricular development if students stay away. Since the birth of the decolonised movement, there's little evidence of growth of, no, I'm not giving away again, of large new cohorts with degrees in Asian philosophies, South American native art traditions, African oral and written history, or especially the study of non-Western languages and literary traditions. It would be fantastic to find more students reading The Tale of Genji, or Dream of the Red Chamber, or studying Ethiopian music. But these are highly demanding subjects for Western students, not least because of unfamiliarity with context, and require as sustained study as do Western traditions. Each may attract a small number of very dedicated students, but some may prefer actually to study such things in their country of origin. So what replaces reviled Western traditions? I've seen what's happened in my original discipline of music. Across the sector, attacks on Western classical traditions outweigh serious advocacy of study of non-Western ones. The one department dedicated to non-Western music, SOAS, cannot sustain an undergraduate music degree. They've had to close that. Elsewhere, decolonisation has been eschewal of music history, theory, analysis, notation in favour of vocational courses in music technology and musical theatre, or practical study of recent, mostly Anglo-American popular music, viewed by some, including at my own institution, as black music in comparison to white classical. The internationalism of high culture is replaced by the real provincialism of the popular culture of the English-speaking world, the real colonising force in my opinion. Scholarly investigation is replaced by platitudes on social justice. In many arts and humanities, dumbing down is legitimised by the language of the decolonial. Familiar and unchallenging culture and thought are taught in the name of inclusivity, flattering students of what they already know. And some teaching in Russell Group departments may not see the extent of this in the rest of the sector. Critical investigation of colonialism, knowledge and culture is always worthwhile, as is wider global engagement. But to decolonise a curriculum has become a slogan devoid of much positive meaning or utility. It is about replacing exploration, rigour, evidence and critical thought with didactic politics of resentment, virtue signalling and post-colonial guilt, throwing into question the very meaning of education. And with all of that in mind, I urge you strongly to vote against the motion.